And then we talked specifically about some of the things that were happening in 1599, and I was talking how James Shapiro in his book, The Year of Shakespeare, 1599, has made a really cogent case for why this particular play, along with As You Like It and Hamlet, probably were written around this year because of the things that were actually that we know historically that were happening in 1599. And the big things happen to be an issue of censorship and literally banning and burning of books and plays that had content and subject matter that was not viewed favorably in terms of how it viewed kingship, particularly, and how those were that there was a big public sort of banning of that. And Shapiro speculates, I think logically so, that it's possible that in the year of censorship that, Shakespeare, being somewhat careful because he wants to be produced, you got to be careful, you got to be produced, was able to kind of walk that line, and especially in plays like Julius Caesar at this particular time. What I was finding interesting in thinking about today's topic was, again, the notion of aligning it so much with what's going on 1599-ish in an anticipation of 1603. I mean, obviously he doesn't know, he doesn't have the crystal ball and say, well, in 4 years Elizabeth's going to be dead. But there must have been some, public speculation about it, or even in the tavern. You can call that public-private. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Things that happen at Martino's. Do they always stay at Martino's? That's a whole other issue. But so clearly, we were talking about the title of the play, and why is it called Julius Caesar when in some ways it's really kind of marking, following more, and today I'm going to make the case for it following Brutus, only for simplification reasons, not because I necessarily think that plays have to be about one person or the tragedies have to be about one person, but just for example reasons today. But you can make a case for really following Brutus, as, all the way through. And why isn't the play called Brutus? And we talked a little bit about sort of the monarch having privilege of title, and also, of course, Julius Caesar comes back as sort of ghost, still kind of haunting the play. It's not like he's actually left. But it also struck me as very interesting is that that this event, which does happen around halfway through the play, and we'll talk next week about where the turning point is, that sort of halfway point of no return. When something happens, you have to go forward rather than go backward. Don't exactly know. I had a different idea today, and I don't know that I like that idea. So you're just kind of carting around. You just sort of play around with it a little bit. But it was so interesting that's less of an issue in a way. There's a little bit of like, should we, shouldn't we, should we, and then they do it, and then it's sort of like after that, like the consequences of that. In some ways, to me, kind of represent a morality tale about how what happens if you have a violent overthrow, which is what this is about, right? This is his story, and the consequences there are, i.e., don't be James I / soon to be James VI, come marching in and overthrow, because there'll be consequences for it. It's hard not to, and some of that may be Monday morning quarterbacking, but it's hard not to sort of speculate about that, even at the time, sort of say here is a sort of morality tale. So there's a little bit of that. We talked about a little bit of morality tale issues when we talked about Measure for Measure in terms of morality plays and how that really was ground on which Shakespeare and other Elizabethan and Jacobean playwrights used, and I think that this is still true here. I think that there's still a lot of morality tale. We were just talking about August Osage County this morning with Christopher Lee and Moore in an interview, and the question was, what's the moral of the story? And I literally asked that because there's still a little bit of, there's a lot of it of Aristotle in me, which is about purpose. It has to be about something. It has to have a moral and that is a judgment thing that I don't think is necessarily good, because it ends up being prescriptive rather than sort of using it to help you understand the play, rather than saying, well, it must have that, then for it. If it doesn't have that, then it's not going to play. And I don't mean it that way. It's just that that's how that can be interpreted. So you have to be kind of careful to sort of say all plays have to have a moral to them. That may or may not be true, and that may or may not be the way you like plays, and it may or may not be true for August Osage County, but I kind of think it's true for Julius Caesar. But it's partly because of the ground on which he began writing plays, which come from those morality plays, and I think in some ways the primacy of Aristotle's theories, which are really starting to become very important by the end of the 16th century. Okay, so that's sort of the recap of where we last left things in our saga of Julius Caesar.